Welcome to Golf in the Good Life, your guide to golf travel across the pond. I'm DJ Jones, he is Connor Evers, and today we are talking about 2027 golf trips across the pond. Yes, it is already that time. But before we get there, Connor, great to see you, man. We are kind of fresh off the holiday break, if you will. What's the latest and greatest on your side of the screen?
DJ, appreciate it. It is time for 2027, and what a great time for this episode to come out and talk about all the good things across the pond in 27 from booking and some different closures and just some items to chat about. But all good here. Very busy. We're starting to look at groups that are going to travel here in April, which isn't that far away. And just like I said, looking at some of these top marquee courses we'll talk about today, but the Portrushes, the County Downs, the Muirfield, and the Old Course that'll open up here in a few months for groups. So it's a busy time for groups that want to have that kind of perfect itinerary to get ahead of the curve. But all good, and looking forward to the PGA show as well in a few weeks too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy. It all kind of stacks up. I mean, here we are as we're recording this, we're right in the midst of the holiday festivities, if you will, and then it was just the calendar turns and bang, it's time to go between the planning and the PGA show. No rest for the weary, as they say, but that's a very good problem to have, and we certainly won't complain about it. But shifting to today's episode, like we said, we are talking about 2027 golf trips across the pond. Yes, we're days into 2026. And as we've talked about many times in previous episodes, the reason we're talking about this so early is because of the calendar shift that has essentially happened over the last several years, in particular for planning. There was a time when the Open Championship would take place and everyone would say, okay, wow, let's go to Scotland. That looks great. And that's when planning for trips in the year ahead would really ramp up. Well, we come out of the COVID shutdown and that calendar kind of eked up to April or May for the next year. And the demand was such and has remained such that a lot of clubs started saying, okay, well, let's open our tee sheet in March and April, and then February and March. And now for planning in 2027, quite frankly, there are some clubs that, in some cases for select tour operators, have already started taking provisional bookings for 2027.
Yeah.
All of which is to say, if 27 is on your radar, especially if you're talking about wanting to play some of the marquee golf courses, the time is already here. That's why we're talking about this now. It's not a sales push. It's not trying to drum up some business. This is just simply the reality of where we are as far as golf travel across the pond. Connor, you're the boots on the ground, if you will, as far as working with our members and prospective travelers. What's the lay of the land as you see it for the year ahead?
You're definitely right, DJ. And, each year it seems like the courses and what have you, they move up, a week or a week and a half to 2 weeks. And you multiply that by over the years, especially since COVID. And practically we're going to be starting booking trips, 2 years, in advance. I see that probably being in the future as well. But we've been talking about that kind of 18 to 24 month in advance, depending on what year what month you travel in. But that's still true for 2027. And, you have to be flexible, but you do have to get on these things as early as possible because a lot of these clubs are going to be opening up in kind of the February standpoint. And you can look at it and think, oh my goodness, February is so far away. But for example, for Muirfield, you have a group of 8, you have to know all 8 golfers, their handicaps and their home clubs. So you not only have to get working on this early, but you have to figure out who's going and you got to figure out your group and et cetera. So, planning and what have you have to get it on as soon as possible to make sure you can get these marquee courses. There are some changes, some minor, some a little bit more major for 2027. We'll get into kind of the more specifics throughout the episode. But like I said, timing is now and essential to kind of get your tee times for 27.
Yeah, and you have to kind of almost take a somewhat bigger picture view of this. So, for example, think about Royal Portrush. The Open was just there in 2025. Yeah. All of those golfers that watched on television and said, okay, let's go to Portrush. They very quickly learned that Royal Portrush was fully booked before the Open even started for 26.
Yeah.
So 2 things happened. They either went somewhere else for 26 or they shifted their thinking ahead to 2027. Meaning if you haven't already gotten going, you're kind of behind the curve as far as
Hmm.
those folks who already have. I see our inquiries every single day, and the number of inquiries at this stage for 27 far exceeds the number of inquiries we'd had for 26 at this time last year. And totally candid, I don't think that that's necessarily because there's this big, huge increase in
Mm.
business. I think it's because we have smarter travelers. We have members and travelers out there who they get it. They understand
Yep.
that this is what it takes these days, that the days of scoring a Muirfield tee time in July of the year prior are absolutely out the window. So let's talk a little about the big four because
Hmm.
they drive a lot of this. Of course, the big four, we're talking the Old Course, Muirfield, Royal County Down, and Royal Port Rush. Take on three of those, Port Rush, County
Sure.
Down, and Muirfield. Give us the lay of the land on those as well.
Yeah, so Port Rush and County Down will open up kind of in the around late February, early March timeframe, give or take around then. So again, timing is now to kind of get started on that. We find it each year, usually when the same process happens. There, you can still book, tee times after they open, but it's not so much, you can pick a random date and there you go. A lot of times they're completely full, or you have to kind of look at those shoulder months. And again, that's even into kind of that kind of middle of springtime frame. So there's one side of it. And then Raleigh County Down is kind of the same timing right around there. So obviously you want to pair County Down and Port Rush into one trip. And Port Rush is having a kind of a large closure. I'll also mention it's in June. So it's the 9th to the 20th of June of 2027. We're unsure what the event was. The club did not notify us of what exactly it is, but I would say that it's probably the amateur championship. Don't quote me on that. Just looking at some dates on the RNA website, but that's what I think it might be. Could be completely wrong. I'll say that too, but that's more of speculative right now from that standpoint. But the dates usually do match up with the closure, so we'll see on that. And the other thing with Port Rush, probably the biggest change out of anything across the pond, England, Scotland, and Ireland collectively for 27 is Port Rush is now holding a kind of more premium tee times than the Dunluce Links. So if you do want to play the Dunluce Links before 1 p.m., you do have to play their secondary course, which is the Valley Links. I said it in the last podcast or last couple of podcasts about my kind of findings across the pond this past October. It was my second time playing the Valley, and it's a fantastic links experience, and it's right there at Port Rush. To get those premium tee times, you do have to play the Valley. If you don't want to do that and just want to play the Dunluce Links, which is fine, you will have an afternoon tee time, 1 p.m. onwards. I can't remember their last tee time of the day. I think it's somewhere between 4:30 or so, and kind of those peak summer months where you're able to play for the rest of the evening. But that is a big change, and just one that we have to kind of notify our groups. And if you do want to play that kind of earlier tee time, you do have to incorporate the Valley Links onto your itinerary. So that's kind of the big things with the Northern Ireland golf courses, and shifting over to East Lothian with Muirfield. Very much the same process. Open Tuesdays and Thursdays each week for visitor play. They're still on an application. The application for tour operators will open up before the public application does. And I can't remember the exact percentage, but I'm going to say somewhere between 70 to 80% of the tee times are allocated for tour operators. So it's more advantageous to try and book your field via a tour operator such as us, H&B. But it's the same process. It is an application. Some groups are successful, some are not. And they will open up, I believe it's, let me look at my calendar real quick while we're here, just get everyone's specific date. It's the 23rd of February when it'll open up for tour operators. So again, all Port Rush, County Down, and Muirfield are all essentially within kind of the same timing, give or take a week and a half to 2 weeks, which in the past it's been a little bit more spread out. All three of those are very much condensed into about a week and a half to 2 weeks. So it's a busy time if you're looking at playing, potentially doing both countries into one itinerary from that standpoint. So that's kind of what's up with those three courses. But what's new with the old course, Deej, or any follow-ups on that?
Well, I mean, a couple. I mean, first on the Port Rush thing, that's
Yeah.
really interesting insight, and I think it's important to note that the need to play the Valley Links, no one should view that as
Right.
a downgrade on a
Yeah.
day. If the Valley Links was anywhere else, it
Mhm.
would be so much more regarded. And so, popping in the Valley Links to your itinerary, if you want to have that advantageous tee time, it's not a downgrade. Do it because it's
Yep.
definitely the right move. And with Muirfield, it's funny you say that about the application. Literally just yesterday, I received an email from a gent that is wanting to do Muirfield and the old course. And he was basically saying, is it possible? Can I get both? And what I more or less candidly told him back was, you can, but it is increasingly rare these days because you have two things that you're trying to navigate. Number one is the Muirfield application, where, quite frankly, every year we have groups that strike out, even with H&B. You know, we'd like to think that puts you at the head of the line, but at the same time, they do still strike out. And so it just goes to show you that you can't really bank on it.
Yeah.
Granted, there are so many success stories. Most do get to play it. However, you then take it and you're pairing it with the old course, where, to answer your question, Connor, there are some changes for 27. Number one is that, you know, typically for the last several years, when it comes to authorized providers like H&B, we would receive our tee time allocation in April of the year prior. We more or less get told, okay, you get 10 tee times in June, 12 in July, 5 in August, whatever the breakdown is. Well, the St. Andrews Links Trust, the organization that kind of manages the old course for the town, they have a well-publicized review that they're doing of the authorized provider program. The fact of the matter is, we don't really know what's going to come out of it.
Yeah.
There could be no changes. There could be a lot of changes. But what we do know is that the Open Championship is coming to the old course in 2027. So regardless of what happens with that program, and we expect the results anytime. By the time this episode comes out, this could actually be old news because it's going to be any time now. But the Open is coming in 27. And regardless of what happens with the authorized provider program, there's going to be roughly a month period where the old course is closed in preparation for the Open. And so you have two things that are happening at the same time and opposing one another. You have an increase in demand because everybody wants to go play the old course around the Open, and you have a potential decrease in supply because the course is closed for a full month. So all of which is to say, if you haven't got started, I know you're probably tired of hearing us say it, but it is time. The time actually probably has already passed to get started. But that's kind of how it's shaking out in St. Andrews, and flexibility, like you said, is absolutely key.
Yeah, you're right. And honestly, I just thought of this. I think I want to add in, just, we were talking about Muirfield and the old course and how difficult it is. I think we should kind of talk about kind of pairing it up. So, you know, you look at a map and you're like, oh my goodness, you know, they're really close. I flying to Edinburgh, and essentially the airport kind of cuts St. Andrews and East Lothian into two. Not really, but kind of. You look at the map, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, open road courses, I'll just go here and play, and I can add in North Berwick and a few others. And yeah, I get it. You look at a map and it's right there. When we're talking about the planning standpoint, you know, Muirfield opens up first and we apply you, etc. And say if you are successful with that tee time, say, you know, May 15th, I'm just throwing a date out there. I don't even know if it's a Tuesday or Thursday, but May 15th, you get it, great. Well, you're holding on that tee time, we have to pay deposits on it, and then we don't get our allocation for another few weeks until after that tee time. And especially with what DJ just mentioned about the old course, it's a little speculative. I mean, we have a really good idea of how many times we'll more than likely receive if nothing does change with this process. And we're banking off this of the 2022 allocation since the last time the Open was there when Cam Smith won. So we're kind of formulating our groups into that. Now, it could be where, hey, you know, oh my gosh, we got less times in May, but we got more in April. Well, it's going to be hard to move that tee time to a different month at Muirfield to allocate those tee times. So with all that being said, it's a challenge. A lot of times it does work out. I will mention that, but it is a lot more stressful to do. And a lot of times, you know, I'm talking with groups on this, and I'm having a phone conversation with them, and we're planning for a plan B, meaning, hey, we can get you that St. Andrews time, but maybe let's look at the Highlands or the west coast of Scotland, or even something different if Muirfield doesn't work out, or you do get Muirfield and it's a different date. Well, maybe you've played St. Andrews before and you haven't played Muirfield. Well, let's go to Highlands or Aberdeen or something. So it's just being flexible when it comes to that. Again, a lot of times it does work out, but with this application, it creates this kind of situation where we're kind of putting in more plan Bs. And that's going to be, you know, going forward, you know, in the years to come as well, even without this whole situation with St. Andrews. So I thought I'd just mention that as well, DJ.
No, it's a great ad. And, you know, the way I capped my email back to the gent that asked about playing them both was, if I was you, I would pick which one is most important and run with that. And if you get the other, it is simply a bonus.
Yes.
Treat getting both as you've hit the absolute lottery. Treat getting one as you hit 5 numbers and you're still getting a pretty hefty check. Like Connor said, it's just becoming increasingly rare. It is possible, but it's something that you got to go into it with that right mindset of flexibility. And if it doesn't happen, we got a plan B, and we got a really good plan B if it doesn't come to pass.
Exactly. I mean, before this application, Muirfield, I mean, if a group wanted to do Royal County Down, Royal Portrush, then fly over to Scotland and do Troon, Turnberry, Muirfield, the Old Course, before the application, it could work. It still can, but it's a lot more stressful to put together from all the puzzle pieces. So just thought I'd add that too. But kind of moving on here. So some big events for 2027, one of which obviously DJ mentioned is the Open Championship. The course will close, don't have the exact dates, but give or take around the middle part of June. And it'll be closed all the way until the Tuesday after the Open. Monday, I believe there's like a media event that's on the old course, but it does open up the Tuesday after. So there will be some tee times in kind of the 3rd to 4th week, give or take, of July, and then kind of the beginning to 2nd or so week of June. Again, dates are kind of up in the air, but just kind of giving out of what it's been like in the past in 2015 and 2022. So that's kind of what those would be. And the other big event overseas is the Ryder Cup, going to be hosted at Adair Manor. Course will be closed for the event the 13th through the 19th of September of 2027. When I was just at Adair there in October, we were kind of talking about the closure dates for 2027. They don't really know what that'll look like. There was potential talk of the course being open for 2 weeks and being closed for 2 weeks and 2 on, something like that. And that could be throughout the entire year. They don't really know yet. Going in the last few years, the Adair Manor Golf Course has been only open for residents of the manor, of the hotel. So you're not able to play it as a non-res, and that will continue for 2027. They're limiting play at Adair Manor before the Ryder Cup, just to make sure the course, all looks good for TV in that standpoint. So those are kind of the 2 big events that will be in 2027. And the other one I wanted to mention too is the R&A has some of their kind of minor, if you will, maybe not the right terminology, but minor events, amateur championship, senior British, the women's AM throughout GB&I. And I will say their kind of timing and dates are usually a lot closer to the event rather than the Open Championship or the AIG Women's that's planned years in advance. So if you're planning on certain dates or certain courses, it could change, but that's just something that, a partner such as us and HMB, we look at the dates all the time and make sure we're planning your trip around those closures, but those are a little bit later in the calendar.
Well, great stuff to point out. And maybe we potentially should even drill down here a little bit on the Ryder Cup, because we, quite frankly, we get a lot of folks that ask us, can you do the Ryder Cup? Can we do a Ryder Cup package? We're already seeing all kinds of folks who are, sending us dates for Ballybunion and Tralee and La Hinch for September 20th or whatever, the day after the Ryder Cup ends. And I think we just have to say straight up, HMB, we do not do Ryder Cup packages. There are several golf travel companies that do. They're pros at it. They do it every time it's over there. One of their niche markets, if you will, is event hosted, expeditions tied around the Open or whatever it might be. We're not one of them, but there are several that do. When it comes to Southwest Ireland, 427, it's going to take, some crazy amount of flexibility. I can't even imagine trying to plan a trip in like August or October of 27 for Southwest Ireland, but they will be doing it. And so that would be, I guess, the little bit of insight to add for the Ryder Cup.
You brought up a good point. It's not our kind of business model for the Ryder Cup. And even a lot of our hotel partners that I've even reached out to, of groups wanting to, hey, they're going to book the Ryder Cup on their own, but then we're going to do a little Southwest Ireland trip, prior to. Well, a lot of our hotel partners, they don't have any rooms left. Even this is September 2027, or it's, penthouses or suites are the only things that are left. And it's premium pricing because those hotels, they'd rather work with a company that, has all those tickets already, and they just package them up. So just something I'd mention too.
Great additional point. And it kind of ties into the next topic, and that is, okay, what's your plan B? So, and maybe not even necessarily plan B, but like where should the smart money go if
Yeah.
we're wanting to plan, but we don't want to have to jump through all these hoops or whatever
Yeah.
it might be. Top of that list has to be England's Golf Coast, because the Open is heading there this year, 26, at Royal Birkdale again. It was just at Royal Liverpool, so we've got two in pretty close succession there, and of course you've got three hosts of the Open. To allude to a future episode, we have some pretty in-depth coverage on the England's Gulf Coast area coming in the next episode, but that's got to be top of the list. Playing it in the year after the Open is always a thrill, and we're certain to see a little bit of spike for them, just like always. People watching on TV, they say, hey, let's go play there. The Highlands and Aberdeen, this is like the combo that is just, why doesn't it get more golfers in Scotland? Because, the Highlands speaks for itself. So many world-class courses. You got Royal Dornoch, you've got the two at Cabot Highlands, Nairn, Brora. Great experience. You could spend a whole week there even. Yeah. But transitioning down to Aberdeen and tying in Cruden Bay and Royal Aberdeen and Trump International, there's no shortage of great golf. And it's usually a little easier to book. You're not having to book 18 months or 2 years out typically. And then Connor and I's favorite, Northwest Ireland. Listen, we've gone on and on for numerous episodes about our love for this place. Cairn and Enniscrone and Rosapenna. You've got Rosapenna now in the top 50 in the world with St. Patrick's Links. So many great options up that way. I would toss in the London area and the Channel Coast, a combo that just is outstanding between, I think there's 4 top 100 in London area, and there's an Open Championship member at Royal St. George's in the Channel Coast, and 2 former Open venues next door. So a lot of reasons to go there. But Connor, you hit something on the previous point, and that is that when it comes to planning these trips, it's not just golf. You got to think about the hotels and so forth. There are only so many great hotels in some of these towns. And, Southwest Ireland, it sounds like, is almost kind of already off the table for some of 27. If you are wanting that Old Course View room at the Rusacks or the Old Course Hotel, listen, there are only so many of those to go around. Point is, it's not just the golf. You got to get ahead of it for both the golf and the good life side of things as well.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And there is some situations where, you have the group and we're able to get the golf, but maybe those premium rooms or what have you aren't available. And we will sometimes flip the trip around so those rooms are available. So yeah, we're talking golf, but it is also lodging. But also say, demand, just has increased. Again, we talk about it so much, but from that, the visitor demand is gone up. And a lot of these clubs, these are all member driven clubs. They're all member and private clubs where they do, open up their club for visitor play on certain days, or sometimes it's every day of the week. And each year there's a little bit of different changes. One club, for example, in Scotland, they're eliminating their tee times about 20 to 30 minutes. So that's, 2 to 3 tee times per day. That's only open a couple of days a week. So that's a big change there. So it's just us kind of keeping in track of all those different things, and why you should have a trip planner such as H&B to kind of keep all those things organized to figure out what days will work best. So that's another big thing. Again, the demand's big, but again, these are all member-driven clubs, and they want their clubs. They want to play their club when they're not working. So we totally understand that and have to oblige by kind of the rules of the club that sets out. But Lahinch, they're hosting the Walker Cup in 26, but around that same timing in 27, they're going to have their member event closure. So they have a member guest, they have a few other things. So August is always a difficult time to get a Lahinch tee time. Sometimes it works out, but a lot of times you're kind of working around that month of August. So just something to kind of keep in check there. And then Royal Dornoch always has the Carnegie Shield. It's kind of always early to middle part of August of each year. Dates usually vary, but it's pretty consistent throughout those timing of things. And that's kind of about it. I mentioned the RNA closures is something to keep track of, but really the big ones are like the big changes are that Portrush situation with the Valley Links, as well as Dunluce, the Open Championship for 2027, and then the Ryder Cup, which will be fantastic to watch on TV. Looking forward to that as well. But those are kind of the big ones, Deej.
All good stuff. I mean, to more or less reiterate what we're kind of always saying, you got to get going early, as we've said, I don't know how many times on this one episode alone, but flexibility is key. None of this is to say that your trip can't happen, it's too late, whatever it might be. It's simply to say that here's the parameters, here's the reality of how this is working today. And if you're not working within that reality, okay, you just got to come into it with some serious flexibility in terms of where you're going, what courses you're playing, or what have you. And it's not really showing any sign of letting up. I mean, you keep thinking that, okay, eventually the calendar is going to hit a wall and they're not going to be able to shift it any earlier, or eventually demand is just going to, everybody is going to have traveled themselves out. And candidly, we're just kind of not seeing that on our end, at least. And with the Open and the Old Course in 27, I've said this before, the last time the Open was at the Old Course, we received like 3 months worth of inquiries for travel in like a 10-day period. It was unbelievable. And then you've got, the Ryder Cup at Adair Manor. You've got Great Britain and Ireland just on show in 27.
Yeah.
I almost hate to say it, but 28 is not the worst thing to start thinking about.
Yeah.
Maybe not today, but you're getting pretty close to where the clock is going to start running for 28.
Oh yeah,
which is just wild.
Few months away from thinking that.
Yeah, really.
Believe it or not.
Yeah, you really kind of are. It's unbelievable. And I mean, but yet, and I mentioned earlier, smarter travelers.
Yeah.
We're seeing inquiries for 28, 29. I think we got one the other day for like 30 or 31, long-term thinkers that are saying, okay, my 50th birthday or my 40th birthday or whatever it might be. And, can we book a trip for 2030? Absolutely not. However, we could definitely talk through how it might potentially work when the time does come. So all good stuff. So if you are on the radar for a trip in 2027, we're going to have some guides and so forth in our show notes. A lot of this episode was built off of our specific guide to 2027. Hit the link in the show notes. There's a little bit more there. If you don't subscribe to our email newsletter, consider doing that. Somewhere on the guide there as well, there is a link to do that, and it'll help keep you at least in touch for when these things are opening and what have you. Otherwise, listen, thank you as always for investing your time with us. You've been at it for 30 minutes. We appreciate that time as always. We will be back again soon with another episode. But until then, we wish you plenty of golf at its finest and life at its best.